us off for finding copyrighted material.
Ah,
And speaking of copyrighted material, so right now we are kind of in a set of things I thought would kind of work with the Desert Island list, but we still have 3 picks left. I like to kind of set up the show by setting that vibe. So
okay.
thank you for sending me that list, by the way, and
Yeah, yeah,
being on the
for
show.
sure. Yeah.
Happy to see some Big Thief and Judy Sill on there, just because I just think
Right.
especially Judy Sill, because I'm late to the party
Ah.
on Judy Sill, and I feel like lately there's been this weird. Oh my gosh, the caffeine hasn't kicked in. What is the word for you're not aware of something, and then one person says it, and then out of nowhere
Oh yeah.
another, and it's like this phenomenon. That was Judy
Yep.
Sill for me, where it's just like it was like nowhere, and then everywhere. It was like
Yeah.
this monolith for everybody. And then when you listen to the records, I mean, I get it.
Totally. Yeah, she's incredible. Uh, and just the string arrangements, and I
Oh
just love
yeah.
like all the photos of her conducting the orchestra and everything. And she
Oh
did a
yeah.
lot of that
Yeah.
herself.
It just her story too. But like all the textures on her records are like super, super
Oh
interesting.
yeah, and her
Yeah.
vocal sounds. And,
Yeah, yeah. And I like seeing Big Thief on here just because I feel like they're another one of those bands that even though they've kind of come along recently, they just have this sound where it's just like in that Neil Young sense where he's just like I think certain songs are already written and he's just kind of the
totally.
guy who like it was like sitting on the table and he's just like, is anyone gonna
Yeah.
sing that? Because I'm gonna
Exactly.
all right, I'm gonna sing that. Like Big Thief has that vibe where it's just like I feel
Totally.
like especially like that riff from Cattails, it's like I feel like this has always
Oh
been
my
a
gosh.
song. Like this is
Yeah,
like a
exactly.
this could be like a Fleetwood Mac song.
That's right.
This could be
Yep.
so many artists, but it's just
It had to be
this
written. Yeah, or somebody had
yeah,
to
there's
write it.
just something about it.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, they're just absolutely. I found those guys just listening to Spotify, and it was the first time that I didn't allow myself to like look them up because I just was like, let's
right.
just judge it on the music itself and just see if I continue to love it. And then yes, I didn't let myself research it for years or like a year and a half. And then finally, when I did, the band like visually is just so like interesting as well, and just like
Yeah.
the makeup of the band,
Oh
and
yeah.
so it's really interesting to approach it that way and like only love the music and not know who's writing it or how they work as a band or
Right, right.
how many other people are listening and does anybody is this even a famous band or not?
Did you ever meet Adrienne? Because like I know like there was like
No.
similar circles because I accidentally like met her and her dad at like one of those NACA things when I was
Oh yeah.
because this is actually like where I became aware of like Storyhill because like as a musician myself that didn't grow up here, I kind of tried to like start booking for my college's activities council to get acquainted with like the music scene regionally. And like Story Hill was just like this ever present name at like these things of just like, especially with the Red House thing. But like I actually met
Nice.
her and her dad because she was managed by the same management agency my friend was for like a brief stint. And I was just like, hey,
Okay.
I met you Booth. And
Yeah. What was that agent?
like I think it like at the time it was like Deji or Deggy or like I don't even think the agency exists anymore. But
Yeah.
like I had like her DVD and I was just like, oh yeah, this is like and then Big Thief was like, oh my god,
Yeah.
it's like
That's
it's
great. Yeah.
insane. But
Yeah.
like
When I first started looking into who they actually were and stuff, I started asking people around, and my friend Connor knows them, and he's a big Folk Alliance kind of person, and I guess they played a lot down at Kerrville too, which we've been a part of in Texas festival
yeah,
down
yeah,
there.
yeah.
So it could be that we shared songs around a circle together, and I
Right.
wasn't aware of it.
I remember her being very quiet, very nice, but like very quiet too.
Yeah, imagine.
Um and it's also like this is a scene where I feel like everyone around you is either like a songwriter or like songwriting adjacent, like if they're not like in the music making music themselves, they're kind of so it's like who's it's hard to keep. Also, I think Dunbar's number is real. That thing where it's just like the human brain only has the capacity for 150 intimate
Right.
relationships at a time,
Ah.
and it's not that it's not that you're being inconsiderate as much as like you need like a keyword to remember names and
Right.
faces after a while, where it's
Sure.
because it's happened to me where it's just like it's like, hey, and they'll be like, Mike. I'm like, yes, from the kitty cat. Yes, from the kitty cat. Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
like that
Right.
old thing. Stand by. We're about to go on the radio here.
Okay. Great.
So we had some Jayhawks there, who were also playing this weekend. But speaking of actually playing this weekend, I'm talking with John from Storyhill. If you tuned in earlier, we're on live on the internet, but now we are live here on KFAI. So if you're just tuning in, I'm making a mixtape for Storyhill today. And we are talking to one half of Storyhill. John, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Doc.
So you two are extremely busy with
Yeah.
traveling, and you're doing a lot of shows this time of year. It's almost you kind of seem to have this like winter ritual where I see y'all doing a lot of these type shows, but then you also have the summer ritual of Story Hill Fest, and yet you're all still kind of doing all these projects on the side. So thank you for taking time to be on this show because I don't know how you how you do it honestly.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah. No, it's been fun. We came out with a holiday record a couple years
Yeah,
ago, and that's I think why a lot of our touring is concentrated around the holiday season. Um, and yeah, we'll probably continue doing that. It's kind of cool to have a record that kind of has a lasting, you know, it's a lasting context, I guess, around it, year after
absolutely.
year,
Yeah,
and yeah, so it's in the way we've been doing these shows, and I think on this tour we'll do it this way, where we'll play a lot of Story Hill,
yeah.
our classic songs or just the songs that we play for years, and then some new stuff, and then we're gonna do our entire record as one piece because it kind of flows in a way that like the best way to introduce each song tends to be the song prior to it. And so um, we've just kind of gotten into this. We ask people for no applause and just kind of do the whole song as like as if there's all these movements to
So
it.
so is this going to be the set list for this weekend's show at the Fitzgerald? Because this sounds like a
Yep.
theatrical production.
It it's not so much theatrical. Like we just did the New Standards show
Oh yeah,
last
that's
weekend,
great.
and that was more that has dancers and the little kind of just things in between everything, little skits and stuff like that. We don't have any of that. It's just going to be us standing there, but playing the songs. So,
Yeah, well, it is. For those just tuning in, this is Desert Islands, the show where I make mixtapes based on my guests' 10 records that they would bring to a desert island. And that show we were just talking about, the Story Hill show at the Fitzgerald, is this Saturday, 12/17. So let's get back to the mixtape here, just because I might have bitten off more than I can chew with finding
mm-hmm.
tracks that work with the desert island. I like to try to find some things that remind me of some of the music that is on the list. So for the stuff we don't have time for, I'm gonna post the playlist underneath this video after each show. But we still have three of the Story Hill Desert Island picks coming up here. But first, let's start some things off with Harry Nilsson here on KFAI. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, every time I press a button, I feel like it's something could happen. Either something could
Right.
break. Yeah, I love the idea that you were talking about of just like having this record with staying power. It's like I think it's just an honor to have anything in that conversation. Like we were talking about like records that just kind of have this timeless quality, and it's just uh I don't know. It's just trying to adopt that I'm just happy to be here
Yeah,
type mentality in my own art, and it's just good to see something that brings folk together like that.
yeah,
Um, so may I ask a question about Story Hill Fest?
yeah.
So like how do you go? Is it in the same place every year, or
It
do you?
is. Yeah,
Yeah,
we started.
how'd you
Yeah, we.
find that?
Oh, yeah. So we started out in Montana, where we both grew up, in, south of our town, Bozeman. It was a
Mhm.
highlight youth camp that we rented out, and it was pretty Spartan. Dirt floor cabins and just nice all over the place, and but really awesome up on Highlight Lake, and then a couple years after that, we just got a communication from a friend that ran this camp at the time, and uh, right around Deerwood, Minnesota. So it's Clearwater Lake um, Forest Camp, and it's just this amazing. It's a sort of a Presbyterian camp, and it's transitioning a bit. And you can be married there. You can do all kinds of stuff there.
Oh
But
yeah,
we just kind of rent it out, and it's got this big old mansion on it that we call the chateau. That's just like this, where all the artists stay, and we set up a stage, and all the artists are on the one stage. So it's a real intimate kind of show, and the whole idea behind it um, is if you like our music, you're gonna love what we like, So it's
exactly.
all these
Yeah,
artists that we've been listening to, and it's just been great because a lot of times, a lot of the people that come to the fest have their own concert series around the
yeah,
country, just house concerts or other things, and they'll end up booking the artists, and so there's it just feels good to kind of give back to other artists and share
yeah.
our crowd with them and stuff, and it just always is a really fun
I love that
gathering.
spirit of curation because it's one of
Totally.
the reasons I do the the Desert Island Records is like I just feel like that's a way more intimate and honest question to start things off with, where it's like you have the
Yeah.
entire playlist of like, hey, this person is wearing their heart on their sleeve with music, and if you like this, chances are you're probably gonna like whatever they're doing,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
and check that out.
Yeah.
So do you try like is the lineup constantly like how do you find these artists really? Do they reach out to you or do you just kind of reach out like,
Sometimes.
hey, we do this thing?
Yeah, it kind of goes every which way. I mean, usually it's we see somebody at either Focal Lines or another festival, and we're just like, wow, we got
Yeah,
to get this person. And there's just a long list of people that we would love to have that we just try out year after year, and sometimes it works. Um, but yeah, it's definitely really fun. That's a big part of the fun is just like curating it and figuring out who's going to
yeah,
fit, and a big part of it too is like we really are interested in having artists that want to be around and sort of talking to the people at the fest and being a part of things and sometimes doing workshops and stuff, songwriting or guitar workshops. So a lot of it has to do with the sort of type of person that they are as well. So we always like to make sure that they're going to be game to be open with their music and sharing it,
oh, of course,
um, and so not just playing the set but hanging out the whole weekend.
yeah,
So it just kind of works out really well that way because then we end up playing on each other's songs, and the campfire is kind of the highlight of the whole thing.
yeah.
Just
That is, as they say, where the magic happens, I feel
right.
like, or at least the
Yep.
memories, the core memories are made from those things.
Absolutely.
And so do you have anything, so once this like uh I lovingly refer to it as the holiday gauntlet. Um like once you survive that, like do you have plans on still performing with like Alva Star or like do you just kind of take things as they come?
Yeah. Good question. I guess I do sort of take things as they come, but with the Alvastar thing, I have a whole record that is just sitting there, and I'm trying to figure out is this something I should just release or uh, figure out how to play with a band? Because with Albastar,
Right.
the way that I make that music is usually just me in the room,
Right. Right.
layering and on top of each other, and I don't even know really at the end of it like how to play the song, so I have to sort of figure it out again. Um, and so there's just a big process there, but and then yeah, it's just hard to know anymore. Kind of,
Yeah.
should it be on a CD? Does anybody, I mean, in the folk world,
I don't
people are
even
still
know.
buying CDs, but that'll
Yeah.
go away at some point.
It's so hard to tell because like I feel like the medium used to just be, oh, these are just, let's explore like different avenues in like this market and this market. Now I feel like the medium on what you press is almost like genre specific. Like now cassettes are coming back, but like only a certain like subsect of people is into
Right.
cassettes. And
Yep.
now CDs, like people say, ah, is the CD going away? Like the CD's coming back in certain genres. Like certain
Huh.
genres, I feel like and you're right, folk is one of those like the CD is still going strong.
Right.
Whereas like certain people only release vinyl because that's all their fans buy, and then
Yep.
everyone just kind of streams it anyway.
Yeah.
And it is hard to say. It's like, well, what do we what do I do?
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
in
and
that
I'm
same dilemma.
yeah. The other element there is the sort of the album has kind of gone away.
Right.
My kids don't listen to albums unless I force them to. But yeah, and I'm just a fan of that art form. I just really like putting songs in a grouping that belong together,
Yes.
sort of figuring out like what is the sound of this record, and do these
Yes.
songs fit or not, and
It
then
is like
the
kind of
flow
our
of it too.
can
What's that?
it's like kind of our canvas. Like the album flow is
Yep.
like just as important as what tracks you
Right.
decide go in the
Yep.
album.
Yeah.
And it's wild too how like cyclical everything is because like way back when like at the age of recording, like singles was all people wanted to hear. And then it
Right.
shifted into like the age of the album, and then like it was just like, nah, like you need to give us more than singles.
Yeah.
And it was all
Yep.
about albums, and now like that has like crested and troughed, and now we are kind of in this weird era where I can't tell if like the single is the still dominant, because there are like these bands that certain genres like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard is only like, no, we're albums. We're only an albums
Yeah.
band. Like you're if we're not here for one song, like you kind of have to take the roller coaster that is whatever we're giving you.
Right.
And then
Right.
but like there still is like we're back to that age where like it's almost, I was talking to somebody about, and preface this with like, anytime you're having a music industry conversation, it's like I take anything they say with a grain of salt. It's like, oh, you know what you should do? It's like nobody knows what they're talking about, because if that was the case, they would actually be doing it themselves. But like
Right.
how it's almost smarter to record a whole album and then just release a single a month, you
Huh.
know, and then
Yeah.
like at the end of the year, then release the album, because it's like
Right.
it's the single is kind of like this. It's that's where people go to now. But I
Right.
do love crafting albums and like actually having like little intros so like the things flow together. It's fun.
Yep.
It's a fun thing. It's a life-giving process, I feel
Right.
like.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, and I even like the concept albums, that just sort of
Yeah.
like
Oh
dwell
yeah.
on one theme, and kind of, yeah, I love that. It's sort of like, a visual artist doing different versions or doing different studies of the same thing,
Yes.
or like,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, I like
It's
that.
it's in are you familiar with Tyler Childers at all?
No, I maybe know the name, but it's familiar.
Country, like modern country, but not like Toby Keith country, like
Okay.
kind of on the underground. He kind of did something similar on his new album where like it's the same songs, but it's a triple album where like each version it's like the Hallelujah version, the Jubilee
Ah,
version, and it kind of explores that idea of like doing this, like rather than picking what version, just put all the versions of just like, all right, and
wow.
it's a mammoth thing, and I still need to dig into it, but like I respect the heck out of
Totally. Yeah, that's
anyone
awesome.
willing to go through that. Um,
Yeah.
so 40 more seconds on this Rain a Rose tune, and then we'll be back on the air. So just stand by for that. I'm gonna throw the headphones on here,
Great.
and then let's. Woo, oh, we got time for that. I gotta play these underwriting things, and I always forget to play them.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Stand by. Rain a Rose drum machine. We also had some Paul Simon from Graceland in that set, and at the top, Harry Nielsen. Everybody's talking from the Midnight Cowboy version. So we were talking about just the idea of putting together uh, an album in itself and just kind of trying to find the ebbs and the flows and keep a continuous conversation going, and then talking about how much of an honor it is to be in the conversation at all. So while we're on the subject of your Desert Island records, was there ever, because I listen to a lot of things and I know you play a lot of different styles of music, not just folk, but like I grew up in folk, and I also like listening to and playing a lot of different genres. Was there an album that you discovered that clicked for you, like, "Oh, I'm not just an appreciator, this is what I gotta do." That, like, it inspired you to become a songwriter?
Yeah. The one on that, it's on the list there. It's L.J. Booth. Um,
Yeah,
Yarns is the name of the record, and I saw him. I had actually, I grew up in Montana and then went to St. Olaf in Minnesota, and had just sort of decided that now's the time to be practical, and get a major that I can get a job with, and
right.
and so I just kind of imagined that music wasn't going to be in my future. It would just be
Sure.
something I would do as a hobby, and so that was a couple months, and then LJ Booth came and played a show that just kind of blew my mind, and just kind of the way that he connects his own life to his music is just really inspiring. It's like it was I think the first time I realized the power of it, and just that that's what I wanted to be engaged in. So yeah, it was like right after that, just ended up booking a bunch of shows and encouraged Chris to come out to St. Olaf
Yeah,
the next year, which he did, and then yeah, we just kind of worked on our thing there. But it all kind of started with seeing his show and then listening to that record, um, because it just it revealed, I guess, what is possible with
yeah,
music to me, and it was like,
absolutely.
oh, that's the kind of thing that I want to do,
Was that
with my
always the
songs.
plan in the Chris and Johnny days, or was it kinda starting off like, "You know what? I love doing this, and we have chemistry," or, like, was there a moment where it clicked into, "Oh, let's try something"? Was that when it became Storyhill, or was that
Well,
a different
so
reason?
yeah, this was kind of before. So Chris was in Spain, and then
Yeah,
it was kind of the reason that I got back into music, and then or sort of reached out to Chris and like was like, maybe we should pursue this more. Um, but yeah, I guess we never. I mean, we always imagined it would be great to make our living playing music, but didn't. We weren't banking on it, and so we sort of. I guess we would plan tours and just like,
sure.
well, at least we're going to get this tour done and just see what happens.
Yeah,
And with the advent of the CD, it just came at the exact right time. I remember we were working on our second recording, and it just dawned on me that we should maybe look into how much it costs to print CDs just for fun and
yeah,
see if we could do it. And then we realized, wait, not only can we print them, but they're actually way cheaper than cassettes, and you make way more on them. Because you
yeah,
can get them for like $2 and sell them for 15, and instead of like what, like $3, 350 selling for 8 or something.
yeah.
So I
It
think I mean, that technological like change was probably the reason that we were able to. I mean, it's how we financed our early years anyway.
Right,
And
right.
the number of CDs, just because they had just come out, the number of CDs that we sold, we could always estimate that we would sell at least to 50% of the audience. So if there were 300 people, that we'd sell 150 CDs.
Yeah, yeah.
And that, yeah, that's just it's a different scene now. It's just done differently. But yeah, that was a good way for us to kind of springboard into a career.
It is funny how the things flip, because now I feel like the price margins are the cassettes are the ones that are like $2 a
Right.
thing, and the CD
Yeah.
is like 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Which is probably why a lot of people are still pressing cassettes. Actually,
Right.
I press cassettes. I think they're fun. I think they're
I
neat.
think they're great. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're just tuning in, I'm talking with John from Storyhill, and here on Desert Islands, I make mixtapes for my guests based on the 10 records they would bring to a desert island, and we are making one for Storyhill. So we have one item left on the Desert Islands picks list, and if you're interested, are there tickets still available to the show on Saturday?
I think so. We heard just a week ago that it was about 500 or something. So it's probably, yeah, there's probably some tickets left.
Okay, okay. Well, so we're also here to talk about Story Hill show at the Fitzgerald Theater, and that is this weekend. But I want to make sure we play all 10 records on the Desert Island list. So here's number 10. All These Things by Connor Garvey. Off of the record, another end of the year. Seems fitting for this time. Here we go. Here on KFAI. The guitar work on this track is really cool.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
had Connor at the fest a couple times. He's actually coming. Wait, no, he's going to be playing these shows with us. He's going to be at the
Oh,
fest.
nice, nice,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So he's just a great songwriter from Maine, from Portland, Maine.
Portland, Maine. Yeah, I
Yeah.
Maine has always intrigued me. I've always wanted to try to get up there because mainly it's hard to get up there, and I have this
Right.
strange fascination with playing places that are really hard to get to.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot
Uh,
of great venues in Portland, I think.
Yeah, I've heard great
Yeah.
things about my friends. They're a husband and wife duo. They call themselves When Particles Collide. I don't know if they're in Portland anymore. They might have gone to Bangor. Uh, but it's like that's in a weird way. I still kind of do it like the old '80s punk rockers, where it's just like I don't really see cities. It's just like I see bands. Where it's just like I
Yeah.
associate this band with Cincinnati. I associate this
Right.
band, Boston, and that's just kind of how Maine is the landmark for me. Like, oh yeah, When Particles Collide is from there, and it's
Nice.
just
Yeah.
like I've always wanted to go, but I've never quite. I feel like the high watermark when I do an East Coast tour is like I stretch as far as like Boston or Providence, and then I
Mhm.
high tide doesn't quite make it up to the New England side of things.
Right. Yeah.
You've probably played up there, haven't you?
We have the we played actually on a boat on a cruise ship that
Whoa,
went from Boston to Montreal. It was a Prairie Home Companion um, cruise,
that sounds
and we stopped
amazing.
in Bar Harbor. Yeah, and I remember the water in Bar Harbor. I mean, I've been in cold water
Yeah,
quite a lot in my life, and that was the coldest water I've ever. I mean, it was the kind of thing you
yeah.
just had to get out immediately, like if you could once you could get your body to start again. But yeah, and actually Connor surfs in Maine all year. He lives a couple blocks from the ocean. He just walks down there and
Whoa.
gets in the water, and his beard is just filled with ice. Like after the first run, like,
Is he doing the Wim Hof thing of just like the cold shower for like the health
well,
benefits and like the
no, well, he's just doing it to surf, but I'm sure it has those benefits as well for him.
That's incredible. That's insane. I don't know. I mean, I've always been intrigued by trying to live in the Arctic Circle, where it's just like the 24-hour light and the 24, like 1 year.
Yep.
Do it one
Oh
year.
yeah. Well, you
I
know.
had a friend who worked. She worked in the the post office of the Antarctic Research Station. Like
Oh wow.
that's the kind of stuff I've always been like. I
Me
don't
too.
know if I'll ever do it, but like I've always
Well, you
wanted
should.
to do it.
I just found out. Do you know about Svalbard?
No.
Um, Spitsbergen is the other name for it. But it's the furthest north land in the world, and it's belongs to Norway.
Yeah.
And you can actually get. You don't need a visa to live there. You can just move there. And
Oh, so it's
you can
like
get.
unincorporated.
Yeah, it's like it's belongs to Norway, but they allow just because no one wants to live up there. They allow people to move in there and live there. So I've definitely thought about doing that. There's an old Russian, what is it, a mine or something, but it had like a this weird kind of community built around it in the 50s. And it's this kind of like really
Whoa.
modern kind of space age looking thing in the middle of
Yeah.
this Arctic land, and it's just really you can actually tour it. Still, it's like it's abandoned now, but
Yeah.
it's got all these like a big huge gym underground, and like it was a place for the miners to kind of like gather and live when they weren't working in the mine.
So
Um,
what kind of like would they allow you to work in Norway or just live there?
well, I have to be married to a Norwegian, so I could actually
There you go.
do that. But yeah, as I understand it, anybody could move to just to that island, Svalbard, and get a visa permit.
What is I wonder what the like what could you do up there if you had to pay rent? Like what could you
Right.
find? Is there a diner up there?
Well, I guess you best like be on the internet, probably doing some like
That's true.
telecommuting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose you could. Yeah, you wouldn't want to open up a shop. There's not enough people to buy
No.
stuff. But you could maybe you could have a gig. I bet there's some musicians up there.
Oh yeah. Oh, I
You
bet.
know?
I bet. I definitely want to go. It's like the
Oh
kind
yeah.
of I know about like the Antarctica thing. There is actually a radio station down there
Really?
where it because it's part having the AM for emergencies, but like when you also
Right.
have that frequency open all the time, it's kind of like the community radio method. It's just like they just have enough people who are like,
Yeah.
I don't know, do you want to do a set? Like we're going to be on anyway, and
Right.
like they do play music
That's
down
awesome.
there, and
Ah,
it is kind of a thing. So I definitely imagine you could get a gig up there,
yeah, I think
even
so.
if you had to curate it.
Yep. Yep.
It's yeah, I always curious. I don't know because there's also like that thing of like the reality versus the fantasy of it. Like I'm
Right.
sure for the first couple days it's like I should have done this years ago. And then once
Yeah.
the reality sets in that you're there for at least a year, I
Yeah. Or
think
the winter.
that yeah, the winter's enough.
Or the sun when the sun goes away completely.
I definitely just want to see what that's like of like 24-hour darkness of just knowing. I think that the arbitrary year is more of like just knowing that it's impermanent. Because I do think that would mess with you a little bit. And part of
Oh,
me
for
is
sure.
curious how it would mess with me. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I could handle maybe I could, but I don't know if I can handle that for a lifetime. Like
Yeah.
that's an intense way to live. It's amazing though. It's
Yeah. They
fascinating.
always say November is the difficult month in Norway because
Yeah.
the snow hasn't necessarily arrived yet, and so it's just dark. And but
Oh
once the
yeah.
snow arrives, it's definitely lighter just from that. Just
Yeah.
but the thing I miss over there is they don't really ever have warm summer nights because they'll have warm summer days that last
Hmm.
forever. But you
Yeah.
don't have like a warm dark night. It was a kind of weird
Sure.
thing that I never realized I really liked until I was over there.
I
And I
bet
was like,
once the sun goes away, it drops like a
yeah,
rock up there.
yeah. Well, and it's actually pretty temperate. It's not as cold as Minnesota by a long shot.
Really? Huh.
Because it's got because it's so much. It's got so much coastline and it has
Oh yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
what is that? The Gulf Stream that
Yeah.
warms everything up. So it's more like the West Coast, like Seattle in a way.
Okay, that makes
Well,
sense.
especially
Yeah.
the West Coast of Norway, even though it's further north by quite a lot. I mean, Anchorage is the same latitude as Oslo, which is pretty far south in Norway.
Huh.
So,
Yeah, I guess that's yeah, I guess that would make sense actually. Of just like it
yeah,
just there's so many weird things that make you view geography a little bit differently. Like the fact that we're, like Minneapolis is well north of Toronto,
right.
but like you never mentally associate that.
Yep.
And it's just like a or Philadelphia being on the same uh, line as San Francisco, which
Oh wow, yeah.
to me makes a lot of sense because that whole Mark Twain bit of like the coldest winter I ever spent
Uh,
was summer that's totally true. San Francisco
totally.
can get like brisk, and I think
Yep.
people it's like, oh, it's California. It's like no, there's San
Yeah.
Francisco's got weather.
Right. And they don't have the houses necessarily, or yeah. Whenever it's cold, I remember we used to have a studio down in LA, and I used to laugh at all the puffy jackets and stuff. But then when it gets cold, you're like, well, yeah, none of the houses are built for,
No,
they don't even have heaters sometimes. It's like,
yeah.
so that it's like, yeah, it's a different deal.
Oh, absolutely. And there's parts of like the West Coast that like don't really use AC that often. Like that heat wave, like up in Portland, a lot of those houses, like they're not just
Yep.
automatically equipped with central air. Like a lot of the, I feel like they just grow houses now, but like a lot of houses just like that's like built
Yeah.
into the planning. It's a lot of that
Right.
infrastructure is just not there.
Yeah.
Um, okay, stand by after this Greg Brown tune. I'm gonna read a local calendar, so just stand by here.
Right.
Some Greg Brown there, a live cut, and kind of got regional, if not local music. And speaking of local music here on KFAI, let's talk about some things you can see if you're near Minneapolis this weekend and beyond. So, starting with tonight, we have a really cool show at the Hook and Ladder. We have the Gated Community. We have Pooja Goswami, Pavan, and so this is like this would be classical Indian. Taylor and Gary Seabird, and Tim is a rocker. All tonight at the Hook and Ladder. Also tonight, Palm Friends' last show ever. It's going to be at the 7th Street Entry. We also have Bathtub Sig, Ahem, and Dark Bunny supporting that show. Tomorrow night, Thursday, we have the Bloodies Hell for the Holidays at Mortimer's. This features Getting By, The Silent Treatment, and River Sinclair. Also, tomorrow night, Scrunchies are going to open for Mets. It's their 10th anniversary tour at the Turf Club. Speaking of anniversary tours, we have Big Woo celebrating celebrating 30 years at the Fitzgerald on Friday, December 16th. Also, Friday, the last session of Landmark Live at the Landmark Center. This session is going to feature the Barley Jacks, and this is going to end the season. Also on Friday, Rank Strangers with Drunk Drivers and Low Keys Folly at the Mission Room at the Hook and Ladder. So, of course, I made a mixtape for Storyhill today. So, Saturday is the big show at the Fitzgerald. We also have Mark Malman's Peace on Earth holiday show this weekend at the Parkway. Oyster World, a tape release. Now, this is at a DIY venue, so if you know where Hell Above is, good for you. If you don't, ask a punk. I'm not going to be the one responsible for that hoopla. But yeah, it is their tape release with Another Heaven, Belly Jelly, and that is at Hell Above. Also, Jayhawks will be at the Palace Theater. We heard a Jayhawks track earlier. Golden Smog is going to accompany them. And then on Sunday, we have Chronica, featuring Just Yoni, Family, and Dan Mogul. Looking ahead, Whiskey Rock and Roll Club is going to be every Wednesday at Mortimer's. And then my next show is next week at Palmer's, Faded Handstand Productions. This is actually a really great lineup featuring, well, we'll talk about that. Let's actually talk about the reason for why we're here. Shameless self promotion. And enough from me. Let's talk about your show at the Fitzgerald Theater. So Storyhill is performing at the Fitzgerald Theater this weekend. And since I'm talking with John from Storyhill right now, let's, for the folks just tuning in, let's just rehash the who's, the what's, the where's, the why's. So when does music start this Saturday?
Oh, 7:30? Is that the show? Is the show at 7:30? I'm asking our manager right now.
Which show?
The Fitz.
Fitz is at
7:30. Yep.
There we go.
Got
There
it.
we go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so is this an evening with Storyhill, or are you going to have guests with you?
Just the two of us. Yeah, we had my sisters last year, and we thought, and it was just really fun. We played with them in Montana. They play
Mhm.
strings with us, violin and cello. And but this time, yeah, we just thought let's just keep it simple. And we have a lot of. It's hard to write the set because we have so many songs we want to
Of course.
get to, but we also want to get to the whole Bethlehem record.
Yes.
So yeah, it's just a constant kind of like, oh, we'll swap this one in, and do that one. But yeah, it's and then Connor will be opening up the set, Connor Garvey. So that'll be fun.
There we go. There we go. So this Saturday night, December 17th, at the Fitzgerald Theater, Storyhill is going to be performing. If you like what you heard so far in this show, chances are you're probably going to like this show. But let's actually play some Storyhill. I know this is not off of the Bethlehem record. This is actually off of your eponymous record. Just because I like this tune, and I feel like it's a good message, especially for this time of year. So here is "Love Will Find You" here on Desert Islands. Wanted to make sure everything doesn't clip. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I hope you don't mind that I was bringing up your other projects earlier.
No, yeah.
But while we're kind of on the subject, when I first moved here, I remember your band, the Hopefuls, but I knew them as the Olympic Hopefuls, and I heard a rumor that the Olympic Committee actually tracked you all down, and like, is this true? They actually found you guys and be like, hey, you love the band, love the spirit, but you're not using that name.
Yeah. They didn't say the first part, but they
Well,
yeah, they
I
just
will.
said
I
you're
will.
not using
I
that
love
name.
the Hopefuls.
Yeah,
So
no, I guess they the Olympic Committee is super like I guess every 5 years they go through and sort of clean out all the people that are using the name Olympic.
really,
So we got cleaned out with the Ferret Olympics and some other Olympics. But yeah, so we thought about moving to the Olympic Peninsula because if you have a mailbox address on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State, you can use the name. But it ended up being actually probably the reason that we did well was because of that because we were on MTV News and it was just kind
yeah,
of like a scandal, I guess that benefited us quite a lot. And I never
that is
liked the name.
hilarious.
I never like. I always wanted this to just be the Hopefuls, anyways. It
Well,
worked
yeah,
out
there
well.
you go. That is kind of a funny loophole though. Like if you wanted to double down, could you have just like gotten a post office box in
I
on the
think
Olympic
maybe. Yeah,
store and just like,
we could have milked it a little bit. Yeah,
or
but
is like does one person have to take up residence? Is that like
yeah,
the that's
probably.
how they get you?
Yeah.
That's so
But
wild
I'd
to me.
happily do that. I like that place a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's gorgeous up there, and it's
Yeah.
I just think it's weird that like they actually spent the time to do like they're troll fishing of just like, all right,
Right.
let's cast a wide net and who's using like
Yep.
I mean, like, are they really losing any action from someone
I,
using that word? Like, are they expecting royalties, or are they expecting, or do they think like people are going to be confused of just like, hey, I
that's
came here for skeet shooting, not these fellas playing guitar. Like,
exactly.
like, I just
Yeah,
don't understand the ruthlessness of it.
right. I think they just maybe they didn't want the named or the word to get associated with so many different things. I bet there's just a lot of businesses that want to use it. But yeah,
right.
it's yeah,
Olympic
it is
cheesesteaks,
right.
selling sandwiches. I mean,
Yeah.
I get that. I
Um,
just, I just think it's funny that in this business, it's never. I feel like it's never a good thing when a lawyer contacts you. It's
oh,
not
that's
like,
for
hey, we
sure.
found your song and we want to make sure it's in the Library of Congress.
Right. Yeah. No, it's never that. That's for sure.
That's wild. Yeah, I thought it was just like a rumor, and or like maybe, but that's kind of, it's kind of hilarious actually.
Yeah. Yeah. We were pretty freaked out by it at first, and then we realized, yeah, we can actually make hay out of this. So,
What could they have actually done though? Would you get
uh,
fined, or like like they're not actually gonna like jail the hopefuls for just
it
being
was
the
like a
hopefuls, are they?
yeah, it's a good question. Like it was a cease and desist kind of thing. So it was like,
Oh, sure.
yeah, I don't know if they would arrest us or what. If we just kept doing it. But,
Huh.
like I said, I wanted to have the Olympic name out of there anyway. So
Yeah, so it kind of works out.
yeah.
I know, you still have an online presence. Are there any like records in the works, or because I know gigging is just hard to do, but like, do you still write music for that vehicle, the Hopefuls?
Not for the hopefuls, but for Alvastar. And I
Yeah,
mean, what ends up happening is I end up writing music that just for writing music's sake, and then it's like, oh, this fits more in um, the Alvastar vein, or this one might be a
right.
Storyhill kind of thing. And sometimes they
Yeah,
kind of put right in the middle and end up kind of, um, you sort of rework it to make it work in a
yeah,
different setting or something, or yeah. So it's less of a kind of conscious. I'm going to make a record for or make a song for this band or something.
right.
Um, um, and I guess that's what I like. I guess I like having that, being able to just kind of step into these different worlds, and
Yeah,
because I realized that music for me is more of a vehicle. It's like I actually don't think of myself as a musician almost. Like it's like I'm first a person struggling with words and
yeah,
stories and trying to, you
yes.
know, um, and then music is just a great way to kind of set a context around it and present it.
It really is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then I like being able to do that in different genres and different instrumentation and that kind
Right,
of thing.
right.
Yeah.
I know the release of the Alpha Star stuff is kind of tricky because I know you're saying like I don't know what to do with this. Uh, but is there a potential when, or is it still kind of like I don't know when either?
Yeah, well, because I have this whole record, and it's definitely like I want to, uh, it's a total concept album,
Yeah.
and it needs to be kind of released at the same time, as a piece.
Yes.
But
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
right now it's like really, like thematically very wedded together, but very sonically divergent from itself. It's just like all
Sure.
over the
Sure.
map,
Like
and
it needs to be the whole thing released at
yeah,
one. Yeah.
yeah. But I want to make it, also a little bit more consistent. Like so, I'm sort of like going back and forth between like, no, just let the songs be what they want to be,
Right.
and then another concept is like, what if I record it, use this record and actually record another record over the top of it and sort of mix it in and out as a
Yeah.
almost like an instrument or another instrument, but then it'd be a more stripped down approach.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
and use only sort of like a select number of instruments, kind of limit myself in a way. But then that's a process that just because of the way I write the music, I don't necessarily know what it is that I'm. There's no charts for it, for example. Like just
Oh,
gotta
sure.
like relearn it.
Stand by. Sorry to cut you off.
You know?
Okay, so we just had local music by Palm Friends. Tonight is their last show. Speaking of local music, New Folios. So Folios, Martin Devaney's project, he just released a new record a few weeks ago. Maybe not even, maybe like 10 days ago. So that's New Folios. And of course, we had some Storyhill at the top. That is the reason I made today's mixtape. So the show this Saturday at the Fitzgerald Theater. You can see Storyhill in St. Paul. John, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know how
Yeah.
chaotic these things are, and I know how chaotic it
Great.
is to be constantly commuting and going. So thank you for taking the time for just coming on
Thanks.
Desert Islands.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Uh, Absolutely. If listeners on Desert Islands liked what they heard, where can they hear it again? Where is your preferred place you want listeners to go check out Story Hill in the
Yeah.
future?
So we have a band camp. We also have just storyhill.com is the
Hmm.
best route, and that'll kind of uh, show you where the rest of it all is. But yeah,
Yeah,
Spotify, iTunes, all that.
excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
And of course, we have the show at the Fitzgerald this weekend. We have a little less than 10 minutes here before we get into Democracy Now. So thank you for coming on the show. Is there anything you'd like the listeners to know about before we get going here?
Just oh, we're putting our tickets on sale for the festival this
Oh,
weekend as
great.
well. So hopefully by
Yeah.
Saturday, Friday or Saturday, we'll have those up, and that's happening August 23rd or 4th. It's a weekend. Yeah, third weekend in August.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, John, thank you so much for joining me. If you're just tuning in, this was Desert Islands, the show where I make mixtapes for my guests based on the 10 records that they would bring to a desert island. Today was for Story Hill. Next week, Keith Harris from Racket is going to be joining me to do the year that was 2022. We're going to do the Racket wrap up. Then, of course, the week after that, Crystal Wax is going to be joining me to talk about what happened locally in music. Up next, speaking of local music, we got some new Curtis and Loretta, but we also have some Zach Bryan. But first, we have this. Woo. Almost forgot to play that underwriting cart. I love how I was just like, oh yeah, I got time for that, and I totally forgot it in the last. So glad we got it in. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for doing this. I know how crazy things are right now, so really appreciate
Yeah.
it. Um,
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for
yeah.
having me.
So normally this is kind of where I say like, oh, I'd love to come to the show, but I have to work. I'm actually working your show, so like
Oh, nice.
I'll be there.
What
Uh,
What are you
I,
doing?
I'm working with First Avenue. So
Okay.
usually this is kind of why I do this show because like I can't find time to go to another show because if I'm not playing one, I'm usually working one. And
Hmm.
it's usually like every weekend is just like, yeah, I can't go. I'm sorry. But like, I want to plug your gig. But like, I'm actually
That's
working,
awesome. Yeah.
working the gig. So
Cool.
it'll be fun. I'll be in the box office side of things. So I don't know
Okay.
if I'll see you because once things get going, I know, you kind of
Yep.
have to do your thing. But if
Yep.
I see you, I definitely would love to say hi. And
Yeah.
good luck. Break a leg. I think it's going to be great.
Thanks. Yeah. Should be fun.
All right. Well, I'm going to sign off here so I can make sure I get Democracy Now on without a hitch. But I had a
Sounds good.
blast talking to you today and
You too, Doc.
enjoy
Thank
the
you.
day. And yeah, hopefully see you Saturday.
Sounds great. All right. Take it
All
easy.
right. Thanks, John.
Yep.